This is Maury Medan Yahuah Ben Yashrael. I want to welcome you to another live broadcast of Living Branch. So we have a great lesson in store today. Probably going to be a couple of parts to this lesson just because of the subject matter. So we'll see how many parts we actually have. But how many ever parts, our endeavor is to bring the Shabbat to a point of delight for us all. And some things we would discover are hard and fast. Some things are going to be in the gray area. So we'll try to navigate through those. But our objective is to be able to pull truth out of it. And that's what we want to do, because the Shabbat is supposed to be a day of delight, a day about Him, a day of doing things that pertain to Him. So that's why we're doing this lesson. I've been receiving so many requests for the little guidance thing I put out. So I said, let me go back and we'll do a lesson on this to help everyone out. And I call it Shabbat Guidance on purpose, because some things that we want to make hard, fast rules aren't necessarily commandments. So that we'll see. Some things we can gather from other places, but we want to look at things from a scriptural standpoint. And from that vantage point, hopefully we will make our Shabbats more delightful, where we can focus and concentrate on Him. All right, Miss Bakah, so let's pray. Baruch Hashem Yahuah Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam. Father, Todah Rabbah, thank you very much for another Shabbat. I pray, Father, that you would keep our hearts and minds steadfast. Keep us ever mindful of this day of rest that you appointed since the beginning of time. Father, we say Todah Rabbah for all that you do. We appreciate you and your infinite wisdom. We lean not to our own understandings, but in all our ways we acknowledge you. Now, Father, please direct our path. We're so far removed from where you gave the commandments, and so many people have added to and subtracted from and manipulated, that all our heart's desire, Father, is to restore your commandments in our life so that we can be obedient to every word that you've spoken. Father, teach us, show us favor. Father, even instruct us so that we, Father, might have a heart willing to do everything you command. Father, I say Todah Rabbah for all my Miss Bakah out there. I pray that you give them an understanding heart, give them eyes to see and ears to hear. Let them hear what the Ruach is saying unto the assembly in this day and time. We thank you for the mediator of this covenant. In the name of Messiah Yahushua, Hallel to Yahuah. Amen. All righty, so as I stated before, this is Shabbat Guidance. And that's what it's meant to do, be a guidance and to guide you. Some rules are hard and fast. Some you will see might have been misinterpreted, or, sometimes what you'll find in the past, what they did, they put what we call a hedge around the commandments so that you wouldn't break them. But putting a hedge around them caused you not to do it. So take, for instance, where it says, thou shalt not take the name of Yahuah thy Elohim in vain, for Yahuah would not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. Well, they altered and replaced his name, and the very thing that they tried to protect us from, they actually caused us to destroy his name, or to cause his name not to even be spoken. So this is what we have to be careful about on Shabbat. And what I want to do is to help prepare you. So many questions come in. So what I'm going to say to you, I'm going to be doing a part 2 next week. So if you have specific questions, and I'll try to address them in the lesson. If I can't, I will address them and send it back to you. So you can send those to info@living-branch.org. Okay, so let's start. Okay, what is the Shabbat? Okay, let's read in Leviticus 23, verse 2. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast, the moed of Yahuah, which you shall proclaim to be set apart convocations, even these are my feasts. So it's actually a moed, but it's on a 7-day cycle. So every 7 days you have this moed called Shabbat. Okay, and you can see it's an appointed time or season. Okay, and it goes on. This is the first one, because remember we were in verse 2, now we're in verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Shabbat of rest, a set apart convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Shabbat of Yahuah in all your dwellings. Okay? So the first word we have there, convocation, mikra. It's a public meeting. Notice it's a rehearsal. So what are we rehearsing? We're going back to the original play, and we'll see this played out. And we're rehearsing the very thing that we saw our father Yahuah do. He worked 6 days, but on the 7th day he rested from all of his work. Okay? Now, another, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Then the 4th verse, these are the feasts of Yahuah, even set apart convocations, which you shall proclaim in their season. Okay, so where did it come from? And as I said before, it came from Genesis, or Bereshit, chapter 2, when he finished his creation story. So we'll just look at it. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work. Okay, so there we have work, which he made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. Verse 3, and Elohim blessed the 7th day, sanctified it, which sanctified it, because in that he had rested from all his work which Elohim created or made. So let's look at the word here for work. Malakah. Okay. And you see all that he did. Creative work. He created new things. He created things out of nothing. So he work. It can be business, employment, how you earn your living, work. But then we notice he rested. Okay? Shabbat, to repose, to cease, celebrate. That is interesting concept, because on the 7th day, He rested from all his work. He looked back at his work and he could say, look what I created. So all the heavenly hosts celebrated with him and rejoiced. Now, when he said he sanctified it, it means he set it apart. Okay? Kadesh. He made it special. He made it different from all the other days. What made it different? On the other days he worked. He was doing all his creation. But on the seventh day, he didn't do that. He ceased from all his work. He rested. He celebrated. Okay, now what does Shabbat mean? Okay, when you look at it, the word shuv or shub means to return. And then on the end, we have the tav, which is a sign or mark or covenant. So it's a return to the mark or the covenant. This is where he placed his mark. Okay. Now, I found this interesting. Shabbat is a verb: to repose, to rest, to rid of, to steal, to put away, to leave. Most often, the word expresses the idea of resting, abstaining from labor, especially on the seventh day, which you'll see in Exodus 20, verse 8 through 11. It is from this verbal root that the noun for Shabbat originates. A word designating the time to be set aside for rest. The verb is used of Elohim to describe his resting after the completion of creation. This example of rest by Elohim at creation sets the requirements of rest that he desires for his people in order that they may live lives pleasing to him, full of worship and adoration. Okay, that's what Shabbat is dedicated and set aside for him. Okay, and we'll see this as we go on. So let's look at the first command. I put this as the command because we can see. So it says, remember the Shabbat day to keep it set apart. Okay, so the word there, zakar, means to remember, to mark. It's a marked day. So you have 6 days, but this specific day is marked. And this also indicates that it existed before the Sinai commandments. So we see the existence in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. Now, 6 days. Okay, so I want you to say with me 6 days. 6 days you got to do everything that you need to do that pertains to you. You got 6 days to do that. He gives you 6 days to do everything you need to do that pertains to you. Work. How you sustain. How you make your living. He gives you 6 days for that. And he asks you for 1 day. But he says 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. So what is work or labor? Okay, the word there is abad. To serve. Till. Okay, it's work. Whatever you do, if you work for someone else, or even if you work for yourself. Okay, and then employment, he used the words malakah, which is work. Now this is employment, so you might tend your own sheep, have your own business. So abide is working for someone else. Then malakah is work, but it's never servile work. It's work for yourself. What you do, you might be, you might trade stocks. You might own your own business, selling cakes, whatever the case may be. So he covers both instances, whether you work for somebody else or whether you work for yourself. You got 6 days to do that. But the 7th day is the Shabbat of Yahuah thy Elohim. In it thou should not do any work. Now notice what he goes on and says. Talks about thy, that's you, nor your sons, nor your daughters. Now listen, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, even your animals. Your cows can't even plow in the field. Okay? Nor the stranger. You might hire a stranger to do something for you. So they can't even work that is within thy gates. Now notice where it comes from. Exodus 20 verse 11. For in 6 days Yahuah made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Yahuah blessed the Shabbat day and hallowed it or set it apart. Then verse 12. 6 days you shall do thy work, and on the 7th day you shall rest, that thy ox and thy donkey may rest, and thy son, and the sons of thy handmaiden, and the stranger may be refreshed. So what is refreshed? They can breathe. So this is not Mitzrayim or Egypt, slavery, where you working every day. Constant boom, 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 boom. But Shabbat is a day of refreshing, of focus on him, of ceasing from all your work. Okay, now I want to pause here and make special mentions. And the reason I'm making these special mentions, because we have so many out there that are, I would say, against the nations or the strangers. But I just want to show you, because we even had strangers among us. But I want to show you what even he says about those that were considered or might be considered like a eunuch, outcasts. They couldn't even. There were certain rules that they couldn't even do. But I want you to read what he has to say. Okay, and this is in Isaiah 56 verse 1. Thus saith Yahuah, keep you judgment and do justice, for my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man that doeth this, and the Son of Man that layeth hold on it, that keepeth the Shabbat from polluting it. So it can be polluted. When you do everything you want to do on the Shabbat, that's your work. So you're polluting his Shabbat. And keepeth his hand from doing any evil. Now listen, neither let the son of the stranger that has joined himself to Yahuah speak, saying, Yahuah has utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. So he don't want them saying this, because they have joined themselves to Israel. So it's going to be interesting. A lot of people going to be shocked that people that join to Israel, he has something for them too, if they're a stranger or eunuch. He's righteous. He's just. Verse 4. For thus saith Yahuah unto the eunuch, that keepeth my shabbats, and choose the things, notice, he keeping the Shabbat, and choose the things that please me, and take hold of my covenant. Even unto them will I give in my house. Oh my goodness. And within my walls a place and a name better than the sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. My. Okay. So I'm guessing we have to start to rethink some things and some prejudice that we might have, because these are his words. These aren't my words. This is what he has said. Okay, and let's see. Let's keep going. Now, this is the stranger. And also the sons of the stranger that joined themselves to Yahuah to serve him. But notice there's a tells you what type of stranger. They serve him to love the name of Yahuah and to be his servants. Everyone that keepeth the Shabbat from polluting it and taketh hold on my covenant, even them. This right here is a shocker. Even them will I bring. He's going to bring the sons of the strangers. That's what he said. Even them will I bring to my set apart mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. So that's why I don't go out here teaching, certain ways, because he's in control. He's going to determine. It didn't say Mori Medad going to bring him to his set apart mountain. This says Yahuah is going to bring him to his set apart mountain. He can bring to his mountain whoever he wants to. All I want to do is have a place and do what's right. Just take hold of his covenant, keep his Shabbats. Some people are so worried about whether you this color or that color, whether you're going to make it, or whether you're chosen. All I can tell you, do what you're supposed to do. Keep his commandments, and he'll sort all that stuff out. That's above my pay grade. It's above your pay grade. Let him determine that. And if you do that, you'll be all right. But these are special mentions. The eunuch and the sons of the strangers that keep his Shabbat and do the things that please him and take a hold of his covenant. So that's what I tell you. Okay, let's keep going. So the next thing we got to know is that it's a mark or a sign. That it's a sign. Okay? And that's in 31 verse 12. And Yahuah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, and saying, Verily my Shabbat you shall keep. Now notice he's specific about his Shabbat, not another set apart day. It's only one. For it is a oath, which is a sign. And if you look at the word oath here, okay, Aleph, Wav, Vav, that's the three things you'll get for that particular name, and a Tav. Strong sign connected. Aleph is ox or strength. Tav is sign or mark. And the or the Wav, Vav is it connects things. It's supposed to be a tent peg. Strong sign, secure or connected. Now, is it connected to you? Do you have this sign in your life? Between me and you through your generations, that you may know that I am Yahuah your Elohim, that does set you apart or sanctify you. Okay? So this marker sign has to be on you. Okay? And that's not saying that you half-heartedly keep things. It's talking about keeping the Shabbat. And that's what we have to do. Keep the Shabbat. Not the way we think it should be kept, but the way he designed it to be kept. Right. Let's keep it rolling. Okay. And it says, You shall keep the Shabbat, therefore, for it is set apart unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever does any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Six days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Shabbat of rest, set apart to Moreh. No. Set apart to Israel. No. Set apart to Yahuah. This is his day. So if you don't want to keep Shabbat, if you ain't hurting me, you're hurting yourself. Whosoever doeth any work in the Shabbat day, he shall surely be put to death. And next week we'll go over an example of that. We'll have a lot of stuff to cover next week. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Shabbat, to observe the Shabbat through their generation for a perpetual, this olam, covenant, Brit. So olam is a vanishing point. It's beyond what we can see. So it's still going now. And this is what happens. Okay? So it's no reason for us to say, oh, Shabbat's done away with, or that it changed to another day. And that's a whole lesson right there in itself. Because, and I don't even know if I'm going to touch that lesson, because that stirs a lot of controversy with people. When is Shabbat? But we'll talk about that at another time. First, we got to get to the point that we say, okay, I'm going to keep Shabbat, and I'm going to keep it like Scripture say. Then we can talk about, okay, well, what day is Shabbat? When is it? How do you figure it? How is it calculated? Okay, notice Exodus 31, verse 17. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahuah made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And that's what we're supposed to do. Okay, now let's keep looking. Ezekiel 20, verse 12. Moreover, also I gave them my shabbats to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahuah that sanctifies them. Verse 20. And set apart or hallow my shabbats, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Yahuah Elohim. So notice it's set apart, it's a sign, it's kept set apart to Yahuah. It's a distinguishing mark. It's a proof. It's the same word used between Noah and creation and Yahuah. Also used of circumcision as a sign of the Abrahamic covenant, which applies to all his seed. So Shabbat is important, beloved. And this is what we have to strive. It's a rehearsal. So let me pause right there. It's a rehearsal. Just give you what I'm hearing the Ruach say about rehearsal. It's a rehearsal. When you rehearse something, you want to do it better than you did the time before. So mistakes that you were making, as you rehearse, just like you're rehearsing for a play, you read your lines during the week. So when that rehearsal time comes and you're performing your lines, you're trying to get your lines to a place of perfection, of maturity, where they just flow out of you. So if you've stumbled in the past during your rehearsal, which Shabbat is a rehearsal, then you start to work on that point. And you refine it, and you get it to a place where you get that line down. Now you can go on and learn more lines. Because in a play there's various acts and scenes. So we've got to focus at hand on what we know and build, because you're not going to learn every line overnight. That would you're putting how could I say, you're overloading your system. When you're learning lines, you learn perfect. So if you know that you're supposed to not work, let's get that down. Okay? Because that's the first thing you see, the first line of the rehearsal that you're supposed to understand or know is to no work or labor on that day. So let's rehearse that. Get it down. Rehearse it. Now, okay, you got that down. Now we can go on to the next thing for you to learn and perfect. Just a suggestion. Okay, the primary command, and then we'll go from there, concerning Shabbat is the fourth command, which reads, remember the Shabbat day to keep it set apart. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Shabbat of Yahuah thy Elohim. In it you shall not do any work, you nor your sons, nor your daughters, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gate. For in 6 days Yahuah made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is. And rested the seventh day. Wherefore Yahuah blessed the Shabbat day and set it apart. 6 days, and this is in Leviticus 23, verse 3. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Shabbat of rest, a set apart convocation, meeting, rehearsal. You shall do no work therein. It is the Shabbat of Yahuah in all your dwellings. Okay? So, again, we notice. We'll get a little more into the thick of things. Notice both references call it set apart. Both state no work to be done. This is something that we see in Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, possibly which is the most set apart day of the year. But this prohibition of no work stands in stark contrast to other high days which prohibit servile or customary work. So, and you can find those references right here where it says servile work. Okay? So that means the Shabbat and Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, there's absolutely no work. But on Yom Kippur, on these other feast days, you'll see that, and I want you to notice the connection, because when you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Shavuot, the Feast of Yom Teruah, or Atonement and Sukkot, all of those involve harvesting. So you're gathering in things. So you don't see any prohibition there against servile work in those. It just prohibits servile work. So those are the differences, and you can go back and take a look at your leisure. Therefore, if it appears that you should not have anyone working for you, and we said this before, nor should you be working for someone else or yourself on Shabbat. This seems pretty straightforward, but besides work, it is also called set apart, or Kadesh, which means set apart, a holy convocation, Kadesh Mikra, which means a set apart rehearsal. So, what are you rehearsing on Shabbat? We've been over this, but I keep reiterating this. There's a pattern established on the first week of creation. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 through 3, we read it. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day, set it apart and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. Okay, now let's run through just an example. Now, in this example, there are a lot of opinions, but we'll pick out some stuff that's concrete that we can see, because this example will help us. Because remember, what is he going to do? He said this time and time again. He's going to test you to see what's in your heart, whether or not you will keep the commandments or not. So we're going to see this is an example of testing. How do I know that you truly love me? If I give you something to do and you do it, you love me. If you don't, then that's showing a lack of love. Okay, Exodus 16, verse 15. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for we wist not what it is. And Moshe said unto them, this is the bread which Yahuah has given you to eat. This is the thing which Yahuah has commanded. Take note. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Take you every man for them which is in his tent. And the children of Israel did so and gathered, so some more, some less. And when they had met it with omer, he that gathered much had nothing left over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moshe said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moshe, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them. Okay, now this is not the Shabbat that they are gathering on. This is during the week. They were told to gather just what they needed and to eat it. And when they eat it or had it, to make sure that they didn't leave it till morning. But some of them didn't listen. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. Okay, verse 22. And it came to pass on the sixth day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omer for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. Okay, now we're pausing here. In shopping or picking from the garden, we get enough so that we don't have to shop or gather on the Shabbat. Okay, so that's what I want you to get from that right there. So if you go shopping the day before Shabbat, you get enough so that Shabbat you don't have a need to go out and shop or to gather if you grow your own stuff. Okay, verse 23. And he said unto them, this is that which Yahuah has said. Tomorrow is the rest. Okay, Shabbaton of the set apart Sabbath unto Yahuah. Bake that which you will bake, Now, today is not in the text, just so you know. It's italicized, so it's not there. You can go back and look at it for yourself. And Seth, that means boil, that you will boil. And that which remaineth over lay up for you to keep until the morning. Okay, now here's a one of the controversial places. Okay, we know that you're not supposed to gather. That's no debate. Gathering is labor. There often is debate on whether cooking is labor or whether boiling is labor. So we're going to take this. This is more of a gray area, because the reason I say that, because you don't see a commandment per se not to cook. As a matter of fact, in this text, we have the imperfect form, which is imperfect is will or shall, and it's not present tense. Okay, bake that which you will bake. Now, this today was not there. Okay, it's imperfect. So I put over here, this is just a mechanical translation, just in case you want to see it. And he will say to them, he which he did much speak, Yahuah, rest day, ceasing special to Yahuah. Tomorrow at which you will bake. So the mechanical translation seems a little different from the English translation. Tomorrow at which you will bake, because we know it's an imperfect tense. So it's will bake, and at which you will much boil, and at all exceeding make rest to you to charge unto the morning. So let's read on, and then we'll come back to the subject of bake, because I want you to see some things. Okay, 24th verse. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moshe bid. And it did not stink, neither was there any worms therein. And Moshe said, eat that today, for today is the Shabbat unto Yahuah. Today you shall not find in the field. So you can't gather. So notice what he says. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th, which is the Shabbat, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day to gather, and they found none. What was the problem in this text? They went out to gather, which was considered. We know we can point blank conclude gathering, going out to get food, is against his statute. That's no debate about that. But we don't see anything said about boiling or cook on the Shabbat. But a lot of people, debate on this. So I'm just making note here for you. And what you should be seeing. Notice, and Yahuah said, unto Moshe, how long refuse you to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for Yahuah has given you Shabbat, therefore he giveth you the 6 days of bread in 2 days. Abide you every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. For the people rested on the 7th day. So, we have gather, we have boil, cook. We specifically can figure out that gathering we shouldn't be doing. From the example. But we see nothing specific there that says there's no specific command not to cook or boil, in contrast to what we see a command not to gather, which is considered work. So, what's the solution? Because I know some people don't want to cook on Shabbat. No problem. And I would say at minimum, you can heat your food up. So if you want to cook the day before Shabbat, everything that you need for that day in Shabbat, you can do that. And you are allowed to cook it up, because remember, to heat it up, because it is supposed to be a celebration. And we're going to talk about kindle a fire here shortly. It is a celebration. Because now remember, there were offerings that the priest and his family, they had to eat in a set apart place. So, when we get down and we start talking about cooking, boiling, it's really a gray area. And we're going to talk about the kindle here in a second, because I think that is another area that we have been taught that might not necessarily be true. Okay, so it's a celebration, it's a gathering. You do not see a command against it. You do see him say, don't gather. Now, for you that say, hey, I don't want to cook, like I said, you can heat your food up. Okay, so let's go on. Kindle a fire. Okay, let's read the text first. And I want you to hone in on certain things. And Moshe gathered, because context is everything. And Moshe gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together and said unto them, these are the words which Yahuah has commanded, that you shall do them. Okay, what does the next verse talk about? We have to get specific. Let me because we have to keep things in context. Okay? What is that right there? 6 days shall work be done. But on the seventh day there shall be to you a set apart day, a Shabbat of rest unto Yahuah. Whosoever doeth any what? Work therein shall be put to death. Now they're talking about work in the context. Okay? Then the next thing immediately goes into, you should not kindle a fire, no fire throughout your habitation upon the Shabbat day. Now, this whole context here has to do with work. Let me get my pencil back. This whole context has to do with work. So to arbitrarily say that this has to do with cooking is out of the contextual flow of the passage. Okay? Okay, because the reason I say this, many of us have never been to Israel. So, have you ever been to Israel during when it's cold there? I have. You're gonna need some fire. The fire should, as a matter of fact, the menorah was burning in the temple continually. Offerings of fire was for sacrifices, because they had Shabbat sacrifices. So that fire was continually burning. You had young children, you had older people that tend to need heat. Fire had to be burned for that. So I guess we all just going to be cold on the Shabbat. It's going to be a cold celebration. So that means you got to turn the heat off in your house. Some of you could be where it's really cold. Because if you're going to take this, you don't kindle a fire, then you got to do it across the board. But you got to understand the context. The context deals with work. You had people that were that form metal and use fire for their work, whether it was for their servants or whether they did as an occupation. So this is what you're commanded not to do. And we'll see this in other examples, because we have to think through this text and connect the dots. You're not supposed to kindle a fire for work, is what it's pertaining to. Now, if you want to keep, how you want to do it, that's fine. You just got, if you're going to do it that way, no heat on Shabbat, no nothing that produces heat or fire. So we got to remember that his commandments are not grievous. And sometimes we tend to take things overboard. And that's why I'm looking at this from this standpoint. Because I've been to Israel. I know how cold it gets over there. I remember one of the first times, man, it was freezing. You needed some thermals on with that wind blowing. And the place that we stayed at, like a place that where you're outside. So when you walk out, it wasn't a hotel. It was like a gathering place. We stayed, one of the first things that we went over there. So when they had a wood stove, when I say wood stove, they had a fireplace and they kept a fire going. If they hadn't had that fire going, man, that place would have been unbearable. You hear me? Because it was cold. Israel gets cold. It gets really cold. So that's why, the experience taught a lot. Okay? But let me give you a fire. Another fire that you might think that you need to make sure you don't kindle on Shabbat. And that's Deuteronomy, and this is based on what fire can be. 32 verse 22. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundation of mountains. Make sure you don't kindle a fire of anger on Shabbat, because it's supposed to be a day set apart to him. So if you all in your emotions and your feelings, how is it his day? You've made it now about you and your emotions and feelings. Yeah, I just thought I'd add that in there. Okay, here's another one, buying and selling. We see this good illustration in Nehemiah. Okay, buying and selling on the Shabbat is something that is definitely not pleasing to Yahuah, because it means business. It's being transacted when people are supposed to be resting. Yahuah gave 6 other days for you to buy and to shop, but the Shabbat is his. So Nehemiah 13 verse 15. In those days saw I in Yehuda some treading the winepress on Shabbat, and bringing in sheaves, and lading donkeys, and also wine and grapes and figs and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Shabbat day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. Their dwelling men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of wood, and sold on the Shabbat unto the children of Yehuda in Jerusalem, or Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Yahuah, and said unto them, what evil thing is this that you do, and profane the Shabbat? Did not your fathers thus? And did not Elohim bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet you bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning Shabbat. So look at all the things they were doing up there. They were doing everything. It was doing work. They were buying and selling. In those, let's see, I think I just might have put it in twice. Okay. So we see here in Nehemiah, he associates doing these things on the Shabbat as evil, profaning the Shabbat. So if you need to buy and sell or anything of that nature, please do it on your 6 days. His day is not the day to go out and be shopping. So what we're going to do, we're a little bit over our hour mark. So what you can do, send me your questions. If you have, when I say questions, if you have something you might want me to cover, because I got some more stuff to cover next week, because this is only some of it, and what we're trying to do is put things in perspective. I know it can be difficult, and some of you are doing. I know you're doing everything from a righteous perspective. You want to honor his Shabbat, and my hat is off to you. I want to do it too, but I want to make sure that some of the burdens or things that's put on us to do on Shabbat are scriptural, and that we can find a scriptural basis to address it from. Because if we can't, then, we got to question it. So I know it's going to be more questions. Make sure in your subject line you put Shabbat questions. So when I'm looking through my emails, I can readily identify it. You can send those to info@living-branch.org. So we're going to cover some stuff next week on the Shabbat. And we will hopefully add more clarity. And like I said, if you have your questions or things that you might be unsure of, send me an email. If I don't address it in the lesson, I will at least at a minimum email you back and give you either point blank reference. And if I can't give you reference in scripture, I'll try to give you some good wisdom that can back what I'm saying. Because I don't want to add to or subtract from. So if I'm giving you wisdom, I'm going to say this is my wisdom. But if I can outright say it's in scripture, then I'm going to give you the scripture and then do that. Because I don't want to be in violation of adding to or subtracting from his word. Because it's great responsibility. And I'm held responsible for what I need, for what I tell you and what I teach you. So I own that responsibility. Therefore, when I tell you stuff, I'm not telling you for my own sake. I'm trying to make sure I deliver my soul too by telling you the right thing. That's why we looked at that. And, hats off. Like I said, applaud those that are keeping the Shabbat, keeping it set apart, that are endeavoring. One of the things somebody asked me that has already sent me how to fill their day. What can I do? Because it seems like, you run out of things to do and you're trying to invent things. So we'll go over that and some other stuff. But my main thing is I want to be of help. That's why I didn't call it Shabbat rules because everything is not a rule because we can't pinpoint it. That's why I said Shabbat guidance. I'm just trying to guide you through this. And if I find out that I'm doing something on Shabbat or not doing something, I make corrections because it's a rehearsal. And I want to get better at my rehearsals. So when it's time for this thing to go full circle and we're actually doing this thing in the kingdom, it's going to be done right for sure. So let's definitely practice our rehearsals. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for my Miss Bakah out there. I know their hearts and minds, their endeavor is to do what's righteous. Teach us, Father. We're not above your reproof. Instruct us, reprove us, give us direction. All our desire is to be righteous in your sight and to be clothed in your righteousness and not our own. Show us, Father. Give us the revelation of Shabbat. Continue to give us understanding about Shabbat. Help us, Father, that we not add to nor take from your Shabbat, but to keep it set apart. I say Todah Rabbah for all of your greatness, Father. Your name is great. Yahuah Elohim Leolam Vayed. And I give you praise, honor, and esteem. In the name of Mashiach, the mediator of this covenant, Yahushua HaMashiach. Hallel to Yahuah. Amen. So, like I said, if you have questions, send me your questions. And I will try my best to respond in a timely manner. or it will be in my lesson next week. All right, hey, if you're looking for books, you can get them at Amazon prices right here, but don't do it on Shabbat. Just giving you where you can find the resources. All right. And I want to thank all of you that went and gave me reviews on the Hebrew 10 Commandments on Amazon. I really appreciate it because we're simply trying to use these to give our children teaching and training through pictures. So the Hebrew 10 Commandments, and guess what's right around the corner? We go back, okay? Passover story. It's good to show them pictures. Let them talk about it. And you all interact. So again, to all of those that went to Amazon and gave me reviews, Todah Rabbah. Because there were some haters on there, and I'm looking at their comments, and I'm like, clearly you didn't read the instructions in the books about interacting with your children and letting them see the pictures. And, so I shake my head. The haters are out there. But we still endeavor to do his work. Okay, if you haven't already, get your bookmarkers and join our bookmarker witnessing team. If you need to get a revamp of bookmarkers, you can do that. We'll send them to you. I think I have one order to send out to someone in California. I'll get those out on Monday so that you will be able to have those bookmarkers to use as a witnessing tool. Please, if you get the bookmarkers, don't let them sit in your house. Pass them out. Take them to your local library. Ask them if you could just, leave a few free bookmarkers for people to use. You'd be surprised at who will allow. I even went to Barnes & Noble, and they let me leave bookmarkers there. I left a whole bunch of them. I said, hey, they're just free bookmarkers. And they let me leave some there, and it was fantastic. So bookstores, Christian bookstores, you'd be surprised. And if you would like to support us, you can do that. You can go to our website, living-branch.org, or you can send it through the mail at our mailing address. You can use PayPal. You can even use our online giving tool, which will bring you here. And the online giving tool is great because it keeps a record by your email address of all your gifts. Then at the end of the year, if you use, for charitable donations and stuff, it'll send you a receipt and all that stuff. All right, Ms. Bakah, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. We've been on for an hour and 15 minutes. Shabbat Guidance Part 1. Part 2 will be next week, so I look forward to that lesson. Like, if you have questions, please send it to me. Scenarios, send it to me, because the main thing